Hi, I'm Delisi.
And I'm Chef James Rigato.
And this is Essential Cooking.
In episode 3, we talked with farmer Michelle Lutz about farming in Detroit, how to start a garden, and a new program called Clinic to Farm, in which medical prescriptions are written for produce.
Michelle, aside from the physical demands of being a farmer in this day and age, what are the biggest challenges that you're finding? Have things changed, become more challenging in some ways than others? What are things like now?
I think that access to land is probably the thing that people are struggling with the most. A lot of people want to pursue some type of growing or a career in growing, but the access to land is still a struggle. And then I guess the other biggest challenge as a grower is the climate. The climate is continually changing. And that's something that I've experienced. I've been making a full-time living at growing food for at least like the last 25 years or more. And I've really significantly seen that as the biggest challenge because, to be honest with you, I really don't know how every season's going to go anymore. The only thing I do know is that I'm not going to have a trifecta. I'm not going to have a good spring, summer, or fall. One of them or two of them are going to be compromised because of the weather.
And when did you start to notice that became the norm?
I always use broccoli as the example for this. So it's probably back going into about 2006 to 2008. I was so super frustrated because a lot of people don't know, but broccoli comes in 3 varieties. There's a spring, an early, a mid-season, and a fall. And there's varieties within those type 3. And you go out with a big effort to get some spring crop in, okay? You're fighting a lot of elements to do that. And then what happens the first week of June? It's 90 degrees. And that window, that environment that broccoli needs to succeed, I kept losing it. So as a grower, by for sure 2008, I had already given up on an early variety broccoli crop. I only planted mid-season and fall broccoli from that point on. So that's a big, significant loss. I mean, you're talking about a grower that used to put in 10 to 25,000 first season broccoli heads. So that is when I really started to identify that things were changing.
So now you've had to change how you plant, when you plant, all your entire
what you can
model
plant. Yes,
had to change.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
What else would you say that has changed in that way? So what other crops have been greatly affected by that?
I think that anything that you're going to go in the ground, in the beginning of the year. I mean, look at how many times Michigan has lost a fruit crop because we get an early warm up, and then we get what is naturally going to happen, another frost freeze. So I think that fruit growers, they always have my heart because those are years and decades of work. And you still have to care for that fruit and those trees and those, whatever happens, you still have to put all the input into it. But you're either going to have a compromised crop or no crop at all.
It's true, and especially with the wine growers, you say fruit,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of that is grapes and apples, which in our state, is tourism, and it's. You see winemakers up north that really want to be all Michigan fruit or all estate fruit or all Leelanau Peninsula fruit. And losing, actually, we did a cider with Mari Vineyards. Ryan Burke from Angry Orchard and I went up there this past fall and we made a cider together from some wild apples that my friend Charles had on his property. And the reason why Sean O'Keefe at Mari wanted to make a cider was because the grape harvest was so lousy. So when you have less grapes, you obviously have less wine, you need to diversify. That's why you see a lot of these, I don't want to say lower level, but the more affordable wines out of the wineries up there are usually California fruit that's shipped in. And it's kind of, people look down their nose at it, but you talk about a bad crop, it can ruin your company.
Right.
So this isn't just, losing some apples. This is like, Michigan's, agricultural economy.
Absolutely.
So Michelle, when it comes to the fall season then, you're not necessarily getting an extension on the other side of this.
It can sometimes. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we are blessed with beautiful falls that take us well past what we would normally get. And then sometimes we're faced with, once again, an early killing frost that if you do not have the infrastructure to save a crop, you can be affected by that. So you always are strategizing about how to maximize what you can get out of whatever it is that you're working on. But know that, you're working with something that's always changing, an environment that's always changing. And you have to be willing to adapt to that.
What's interesting, too, I want to comment on that because as a chef, what I find, I don't want to say frustrating, but peculiar, is that holidays and tradition really cut in the way of the growing cycle, because sometimes you have tomatoes through October.
Yes.
And really nice tomatoes. Like if you got, there's some 80-degree Octobers that we've had.
Yes.
And people want pumpkins. And like pumpkins also sometimes show up too early. So you'll have a beautiful pumpkin at the end of September, but like there's no market for it. And then come Thanksgiving, they're looking for fresh pumpkins to make pumpkin pie with. You're like, are you kidding me? Like there hasn't, it's been snowing for 2 weeks. And
Thank you for feeling our pain.
Oh, absolutely. I often try to tell people, and this is why a big part of how I designed Maple Gray was I didn't want to promise anything. I write the menu based on what's available. So I'll have someone that's like, can you do our wedding in October? I'm like, absolutely. Like, can we see a menu? I'm like, absolutely not. We'll talk about what you can and can't have. Allergies, no problem. I got you. But like, I will not discuss like whether we'll do a tomato salad or if it'll be a kale salad or if it'll be like, a pumpkin cheesecake, or it's going to be like, apples. We don't know what is going to happen, especially like you said, like we do have beautiful falls. And I feel like if anything is consistent in the global warming is high heat in that late fall, October and early November. We might have frost. We might have, dropping temperatures too, but hot Octobers are like a new thing. And so you do see peppers and, tomatoes way through September. So you need to get used to eating tomato salads later and expect your, pumpkins kind of when they show up, like, and roast and scoop and freeze versus like, ending up with canned pumpkin for your pumpkin pie.
Restaurants that have a set menu that depend on having this particular piece of produce available at this particular time.
Those restaurants to me are archaic. And I think that Michelle and I, why we've worked together so well for 15 years is because I've never once told her what to give me. I mean, even when she wants to know, what should I plant? I'm like, I don't care. Give me the good stuff. Because I just know that, she'll act frustrated, but then she's going to plant whatever she knows. She kind of feels the weather coming, a little bit of voodoo. And then she shows up with the most beautiful product you've ever seen. So I rarely ever ask for something from you other than just bring me something. She always texts me what she has, and then I order that.
And then you just make something out of it.
And I think that if more restaurants did that, people like Michelle would have a much more flexible, life. It wouldn't be so.
And it's not just me. We would start to break into this commodity-based system.
Yeah.
And that's what we really have. We have to take a different approach to food.
Well,
we have to take a smaller, more local
Absolutely.
approach to it and be more flexible and far more seasonal.
like what are our two biggest crops, right? It's soybeans and then corn.
Correct.
And speaking of commodity, for all the land, you just said it's hard to access land for people, and it's so true. I don't think that the average person knows how many farmers are renting land.
Right.
And like that to me is so messed up, considering that the composting and the hoop houses and the infrastructure you're doing to this land, the topsoil you're creating for someone else to like sell it off to become condos
At any time.
That's a problem. It's a big problem. And I think that we need like huge assistance. We need like a change in hands, and farmers should own their land.
So do we find the small independent farmer an endangered species almost, or are they getting the support they need? Like how does that fit into the whole ecosystem of how we get our food? Because more and more people say, I want to go to that farmer who's growing things that way.
Yeah.
And Michelle, can you talk a little bit? And James, I'm sure you know a lot about
please.
that too, but I'm really curious about that dynamic.
So, I think I was a relatively young farmer kind of getting into it in my 20s, and being a woman, and also just having a really hard time getting information, to be honest with you. I mean, I was doing this before Google was even around. The good news is that I feel like so many more people are interested in pursuing agriculture, learning how to grow, learning to be more self-sustainable, whether it's for just themselves and their own family or their community. So I think that I'm seeing far greater numbers in younger people and older people getting involved in growing, which is, just phenomenal. But a lot of people are doing those on land that they don't rent. So it's just not, the future isn't secure.
So you mean land they don't own?
Right. I'm sorry, land that they don't own.
Yes.
Sure.
So Michelle, people are getting a lot more interested in controlling what goes in their bodies, knowing where it comes from. And so they're turning to, I'm going to plant a garden at my house. Now, I've had people, I grow my own food, so does James, but some people get really intimidated by, I don't know how to start.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. I don't think I'm out of my depth on this.
Yeah.
And, nature's pretty amazing. You put the seed in the ground and then the thing grows. I mean, I know it's very simplistic, but it is a miracle every time it happens. And that's how it happens. But you have to make sure you're set up for success to do that. So can you just talk about just a quick tutorial for somebody that says, gosh, I really want to grow my own food and I don't even know how to start?
Yeah. So definitely you got to keep it simple, right? You just have to do a couple of things. First of all, just evaluate what your conditions are. If you have a sunny front yard or backyard, you got to put the stuff that needs the sun there. If you have a shady backyard or front yard or wherever you want to grow, you have to plant stuff that's going to be okay in there. Pretty two general rules of thumb. Whatever makes a flower, that's going to produce a fruit. So a tomato, a pepper, an eggplant, a cucumber, a bean, think melons, they need the sun. The more of it that they can get, the better. Put those things in there. If you say, I don't have that, and you still want to grow a tomato, put it in a pot, a large pot. Put it in a sunny location. There's a lot of things that don't flower that are delicious, right? Greens, spinach, herbs. Those can go into shadier locations. So just make it a little bit more simple for yourself. And then focus on growing what you actually like. Do not bother. So many times people put in their garden plants because they feel some kind of responsibility to have a garden like everyone else. Yeah. If you only want tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers, go for it. You don't have to complicate this. And you don't have to start huge. You can start with, something small. I am a big believer in raised beds, though, for beginners. It just makes things so much easier for folks. So whether you're using an actual container or kind of making yourself your own raised bed, your chances...
Black perspectives haven't always been centered in the telling of America's story. Now, we're taking center stage. Introducing NPR's Black Stories, Black Truths, a collection of Black-led stories from NPR's podcasts. Search NPR Black Stories, Black Truths wherever you get your podcasts.
Our success are going to be higher.
So, Michelle, if you were going to tell somebody to try something that they probably wouldn't grow that you're excited about, or in James, in your case, what would be great to cook?
Yeah.
That people are like, I don't know about that. I don't know what that is. Talk a little bit about what to grow that people might not usually grow and what you would like to see people cook more that they're missing out on.
Sure.
So for me, it's radishes. I love my radishes. And they're they come all season. And then some quirky little things like we were just talking about kohlrabi. It's honestly one of my favorites, and it's inexpensive and easy and quick to grow, and people really don't use that, but it comes in purple and white, and it's like a cabbage apple in my opinion.
Yeah, and then you're absolutely right. And the cool thing about kohlrabi is that you can eat, the greens are so delicious.
Yeah,
the bulb is so delicious. It's it's a very high yield.
Yeah.
So you tell us what you would do with that.
Well, for kohlrabi, I like to cook the greens like you would turnip greens or Swiss chard, just a gentle saute. They're a little bit thicker than you think, but once you start cooking them, they really break down fast.
Okay.
But the actual bulb, I like to just gently peel. They're really young, so you probably scrub, but kind of peel. You can get a vegetable peeler out or just a knife and cut away the nubs. And you really want to shave it thin. And I like to treat it almost like a carpaccio. So I would shave it thin, and I would do any kind of nice acidic dressing. I would do brown butter, a little sherry vinegar, raisins, pine nuts, and just kind of just top that immediately. Even some shaved cheese or ricotta salata, just really, really simple. But that's kohlrabi. But radishes are the same way, in my opinion. So radishes, the greens are delicious. They're a little bit prickly when you actually clean them. But the bulbs, I love to roast radishes. A lot of people just think that they're only for snacking raw. But if you roast them hard, like potatoes, they're so delicious. And the spice goes away if you don't like the spiciness of radishes. Roasting radishes like potatoes is very underrated.
Mm-hmm. So you would roast them, and then what would you put on them? Just salt and...
you could use salt, pepper, olive oil, and just eat them with the rest of your meal.
Once they're roasted,
I also like to do radishes in a little bit of whey or even milk and kind of cook them down and then finish them with honey. So radishes cooked in milk and honey it's pretty cool. And I feel it's kind of biblical. Mm-hmm. Michelle, you and I have worked together for about the last 15 years, and you have gone from large-scale CSA farming to greenhousing in a pretty boutique, environment at the hospital, to working for Detroit Public Schools, to working for Recovery Park, which obviously, the whole recovery part of that was, rehabilitating people coming out of the prison system, teaching them incredible skills. And now you're at Buckets of Rain talking about, getting actual prescriptions for food. So I feel like there's not a lot of farmers that I've seen that wide of a spread, right? Usually, like when I talk to a farmer, they've kind of been doing a similar thing for a long period of time. Now, you're talking about, you've seen the socioeconomic impact of food and of the public school systems. How can somebody that wants to help, maybe somebody like a listener to this, that's like, how do I get involved? How do they help people like you continue to do what you do?
Well, first of all, have some appreciation for local food systems. Celebrate them, support them, embrace them. Realize that we need more farms within our city limits of all cities. Okay, so for equality, for all of those reasons. So we absolutely need people to understand that it's imperative that local food systems survive, and that they are not looked at as, a space where another store can go in or another apartment complex or something like that. We have to make space for green spaces, for growing food. I'm not saying that all open spaces need to be growing spaces, but we need to allow for that. We need to celebrate that. And then we need to make sure that along with allowing the space, when I talk about supporting, find out where you can volunteer. So, for example, the organization that I'm helping right now, Buckets of Rain, it really survives solely because of volunteers. So I am blessed with getting about 25 to 30 people a week that all come in and give 3 hours. That's how that food system is currently surviving. And that's a concentrated system of feeding shelters and helping those in need. If it were not for people giving their own personal time to come and pull weeds, plant seeds, water crops, we wouldn't be distributing as much food as possible.
And you're also talking about a free education.
Correct.
So if you want to start learning about growing, you can volunteer, help the community, feed those in need, and get an education on sustainable growing in an urban environment.
Right. But I'm going to make this very clear. If you come and volunteer for me, you're going to get the work before you get the tip.
That is,
because I get a lot of that. I'm going to be for real.
Education in farming that doesn't involve
show me. I will open my brain.
Yeah,
I mean, getting into farming was really difficult for me because I did not grow up on a farm. I grew up east side of Detroit. Trying to get the education was probably one of the most daunting things. And I still have so much to learn, But I promised myself if I ever figured it out, whether it was the successes or the failures, I wanted to be an open book.
Yeah.
And so I will share with folks,
right.
But I'm going to need a little sweat first.
But I think you're kind of skipping over something that I find special, and correct me if I'm wrong. You were certified organic.
Correct.
At Maple Creek at a time when this wasn't mainstream yet.
Right.
And you also, you were checking books out of libraries. You weren't like going online to this how to become certified organic, DIY YouTube video talk through.
Right.
You were checking books out of libraries and reaching out to the government and figuring out how to become certified organic.
And reaching out to a government that when I first walked into my very first farm service agency, I was told, your farm doesn't fit our forms. Our forms go like basically, X amount of acres of corn and X amount of acres of soybean. And I don't know where I found the courage, but I said, how about you change your forms to fit a different kind of agriculture system? Like my system can be far more lucrative because that's really all they cared about, right? Is like how much could you make per acre with what you were doing. So showing them that, hey, there is a different system out there. It may not be as straightforward, but there's a different system.
Now, I don't want to open Pandora's box, because organic has its value significantly. But I'm going to bet that you think natural, small-scale, intelligent growing is equal or greater than, in some cases, going to the grocery store and buying an organic bag of something.
Yeah. You just got to have balance. That's all I think that we have to achieve in our growing systems. I'm personally over labels. I'm totally done with it because I think that there's fraud in all of it.
Yeah.
What I'm a big believer in is relationships. If I'm growing you food, and you want to see how I'm doing it, ask me. Come and see it. Just be completely full disclosure. But finding a healthy balance in a growing system is all that's important. You basically want to have more good bugs than you have bad bugs and do what you can to keep disease and weeds at bay.
One of my favorite quotes from a farmer, Tom Becker, was a good friend of mine. I went out and visited Sunseed years ago. And I asked him because, he was like, what do you do about pests? And he looked at me kind of peculiar and he said, well, we don't call them pests. And that was a really, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about, obviously how you kind of let the young, and I'm sure you know, Michelle, but like plants have immune systems too. You let them be exposed to certain amount of, bugs, and they kind of will build an immune system. And then the idea is that we eat that immune system and we become, build our immune systems. So when you have everything bleached clean, you're not getting as many nutrients as if you were on a natural farm.
Yeah. I couldn't be part of a system
Of course.
that doesn't help something else or benefit another. It has to be a full circle approach or else it's never going to work.
When I was in France working on an organic vineyard, the farmer took me over to a non-organic vineyard, a very pesticide, like sterile vineyard. And you walk through it and you don't hear or see anything.
Right.
It's only grapes.
Right.
You walk through an organic vineyard, there's lizards, there's snails, there's grass, there's weeds, there's all sorts of morning glories growing. And you're like, how did they get this vineyard to be nothing but grapes?
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
kinda
if a
scary.
frog can't survive in that environment,
How can you?
Hey, Michelle, I wanted to ask you about clinic to farm.
Yeah.
Because we talk about, if you get the nutrients you need from the food that you eat, you're healthier, obviously. And in this case, you can heal your body. And that's what this is based around, right?
Right.
That thought. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So it's a partnership with the Say Yes Clinic that is right across from the Buckets of Rain Garden in Highland Park. And women are written a prescription for 6 weeks of at a minimum of 20 servings of fresh produce. So they come over to the garden once a week. I send them off with a couple of large bags filled with, like this week they got kale, collards, Swiss chard, beets, carrots, onions, cucumber, tomatoes, zucchini, cabbage, green beans, basil, sage. That's what they got this week. The women share with me, some of them, about some of the health ailments that they are dealing with. There's women that are on a weight loss journey trying to lower their blood pressure, their blood sugar. And then every 6 weeks they go back and they get a checkup on those numbers. And then they're written another prescription. So some women, have talked about significant weight loss and then really getting off the medications, really improving their health. It's incredible. And we hope to continue to grow that program.
That's amazing.
All right, so Michelle, we have a couple fun questions for you. What food is always in your refrigerator?
Oh, that's a good question. As far as produce, I'm always going to have garlic and onions around. But it's usually just whatever's in season, to be totally honest with you. So it can't ever be probably one thing. Butter.
Yeah, I was
always
gonna say,
have butter.
What about mustard, butter, pickles, anything that you're always like?
I love mustard.
Yeah, mustard.
So definitely that's always in my refrigerator. Eggs, always going to have those in my refrigerator.
If you had to eat at a fast food restaurant, which one would it be?
Boy, it's a hard question right now, though, just because of all the economics of who's behind some of our fast food. But if I'd have to say, if I'm going to pull over for a burger, it'd be a Wendy's burger and French fries.
And one final thing, who's your favorite music artist?
Oh, man. Annie Lennox.
Oh,
Good choice.
She's probably like my number one all the way around. As a teenager, my two inspirations were Grace Jones and Annie Lennox.
Well, we clearly like her taste in music.
Yes, we do.
And some of the incredible work she's doing around the Motor City. Thank you for listening to this episode of Essential Cooking. We would also like to thank La Marca Prosecco for their support. Fresh from the hills of Veneto, Italy, you cannot go wrong with a little bit of bubbly.
And we'd like to thank Joan Isabella, our executive producer, associate producers Lisa Brancato and David Lyons, production provided by Studios on the Pond and Rowan Nemisto, original music provided by the Mallet Brothers. This is a production of Detroit Public Radio, WDET.
Subscribe on your favorite podcast app and join us as we explore the world of food and how to cook it right here on Essential Cooking.